Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good
Good
morning. Good
morning.
morning.
Good morning.
Good
Welcome
morning.
to the session on enhancing college and career counseling using the UN SDG framework and goals. We have Dr. Uttiyo Raychaudhuri, the moderator for this panel. He is the Vice Provost for the Internationalization at University of Denver, USA.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys. So today we're going to be talking about, a broad overview of this UN SDG framework goals, how it can enhance college counseling. We will go through some panel intros in a sec, and then we'll have some brief presentations by the panel on various facets of this topic. We will then finish up with about 15 minutes, as they said, to take Q&As. Please share, participate, share your thoughts, your questions, and then we will get ready to wrap up. If you're joining us virtually, I ask if you can keep your mics mute, videos on. We would love to see your smiling faces. And all of those joining us in person again, thank you. Thank you so much. Stay safe and let's get going. So if they can pull the slides up, then we can get started. So I'm really excited to be joined here by two absolutely distinguished members who will share their info, their stories with us. Uh, First, we have with us Dr. Deepa Tyagarajan. Dr. Tyagarajan is the Director of Global Agri-Food Systems and the Value Chain Programs in the Department of Food Science and Human Nutrition at Michigan State University. Her global agri-food systems development work focuses on agriculture, nutrition, and health linkages, and on food safety capacity, development for value chains, and market access for agricultural commodities in developing countries. She has led several food and agricultural supply chain development projects funded by USAID, USDA, the WTO, World Bank, other UN agencies, the private sector, and other organizations globally, particularly in Africa, Asia, and other places. She also provides leadership to international studies and programs and serves as the strategic advisor for international student recruitment at Michigan State University. Deepa, if you could give them a wave. Um, Also joining us is Shishir Kumar Upadhyay. Shishir is a strategy and marketing professional with around 15 years of experience in higher education, science, technology, and medical, STM, information analytics, pharmaceuticals, and medical devices and diagnostic landscapes. He has strong experience in leading South Asia recruitment and partnership goals for US and UK organizations and universities. In his current role, Sheshir manages the recruitment and partnership activities of Lehigh University in South Asia. Shishir has completed a double master's in biotechnology from IIT Roorkee and in business management from the Schilling School of Business. Uh, Shishir, if you give them a wave. There you go. So these are our five key folks here. Um, and if we can go to the next slide, thank you. So briefly in the agenda today, we will talk about, we'll do the panel introductions and we'll do our presentations. Sorry, next slide. Yeah, I can see the slide. Thanks.
Yep.
So what we're going to cover today in this discussion and presentation is we're going to look at three broad things. A brief understanding of the role of the UN SDGs in the future of career readiness for students. We will also determine how the UN SDG framework can enhance counseling practices. And then we will illustrate some UN SDG-based education and career choices for the students. So if we can get to the next slide, thank you. Wonderful. So this, I'm going to do some few intro slides and then turn it over to my wonderful colleagues here. So I'm going to talk about the role of UN Sustainable Development, the goals and the framework about it. So this is the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which was adopted by all the United Nations member states in 2015. And it provides a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet now and into the future. At its heart are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and you see those images illustrating those 17 goals there, which you see on the screen. And they are an urgent call for action by all countries, developed and developing, in a global partnership. They recognize that ending poverty and other deprivations must go hand in hand with strategies that improve health and education, reduce inequality, and spur economic growth, all the while tackling climate change and working to preserve our oceans and forests. So these SDGs build on decades of work by countries and the UN. So really going back to give you a little brief history on this, about June 1992, we had the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And more than 178 countries at that time adopted what was called the Agenda 21, which is a comprehensive plan of action to build a global partnership for sustainable development, to improve human lives and protect the environment. This was followed by the member states unanimously adopting the Millennium Declaration at the Millennium Summit in September 2000, right at the turn of the century, at the UN headquarters in New York. The summit led to the elaboration of the 8 Millennial Development Goals to reduce extreme poverty by 2015. These were followed by the Johannesburg Declaration in 2002, the UN Conference on Sustainable Development, also known as the Rio Plus 20, in Rio in 2012. And then that process really culminated in the subsequent adoption of this 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, with these 17 Sustainable Development Goals at its core. So the UN Sustainable Development Summit in September 2015 adopted this. Today, the Division for Sustainable Development Goals in the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs provides a substantive support and capacity building for these SDGs, and all the related thematic issues around it, from water, energy, climate, oceans, urbanization, transport, science, technology, the Global Sustainable Development Report, the partnerships, the small island developing states, all of this. It also plays a key role in the the evaluation of UN system-wide implementation of these goals, the 2030 Agenda, and on advocacy and outreach across the board. It takes broad ownership of these SDGs, and that they must translate into a strong commitment by all stakeholders to implement these global goals. And then it aims to really facilitate this engagement. If we could have the next slide. Thanks. So as you see here, this is just another representation where we are looking at these goals, chunked up in a different way. What I want to clarify, and this is the common myth out there, that when we think sustainability, we are only thinking plastic bags, green environment, we're thinking climate. But the sustainable development goals and the issue of sustainability, it really addresses it from a very broad perspective. And you can look at it really from social, environmental, and economic. And at the heart of this, really, in the intersection, lies the issues of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So we've got to bring everyone together as we move along on these. The next slide, please. And here's another way of really looking at them. So you can really visualize the SDGs from the lens of these 5 Ps, people, prosperity, peace, planet, and partnership. So as you saw in these last few slides, we have a very broad encompassing perspective that are covered by this SDG framework. And therefore, all the work that we are doing in our educational institutions can very well be included in these various buckets, or you can slice and dice it in different ways to find alignment with this framework and the goals. They are increasingly becoming relevant in the face of COVID crisis, as we are seeing. Many of these goals are not only being abandoned under duress, but the spread of disease is also directly as a result of the failure from us to adequately address these goals. And that's why we have this pandemic. If we can have the next slide, thanks. So in these next 3 slides, excuse me, I'm gonna talk about and share some resources and an example from my university, but essentially tell you how we are addressing these sustainable development work and where you can see similar opportunities for yourself and avenues for your institution. So I highly encourage you to look up this SDG initiative that I present on this slide, where there are about 17 universities around the world, but there are many more. That number is growing, has really created an opportunity to educate learners about the SDGs and how they can contribute. These are massive online courses through the MOOCs. It's delivered through the Coursera platform. It's free of cost. You can enroll. And these courses also, oftentimes provide hands-on opportunities with NGOs and with international organizations. So again, if you really look at the broader perspective, it doesn't matter, you have a biology student or you have a student who's studying economics. There is some aspect of the work that they are doing which is integrated in these 17 SDGs, which are broadly framed. And I'll show you with some examples if we can get to the next slide. So this is an example at looking at sustainability here at GU. So this is a direct, measure, quantitative guideline from a couple of years ago on how not only did we embrace the sustainable development goals, but how the university also is, as a result of this, directly seeing sustained reduction in our environmental and economic footprint. And at the same time, it is enhancing our social outreach and education. And this is something that it doesn't matter. You're a small K-12 school, you're a large public school, a private school, you're a university, whatever institution, you are a business, in whatever format you are, the embracing of this broad encompassing idea really incorporates some direct tangible benefits that you can take away from it. And this is like, as you see in the numbers, almost 38% reduction in greenhouse gases, $690,000 just in electricity power usage. 8,000 people have participated in these programs. And this is, I'm talking from 2 years ago. So if you could go to the next slide. So I will give you a few other examples of some of the things that you could talk to your students about, how they can really incorporate this. So this is the last slide, and then I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues. So in this slide, I shared the example how across the board, and this is an example from DU, but similar examples are at other universities. I mean, in universities I've been previously at Georgia, at Clemson, at Cornell. They all have these kind of avenues available where there are actual disciplinary studies in sustainability, but many of these are also cross-disciplinary courses. There are majors and minors. There are graduate courses available. Those lie from international studies to certain intersections in geography or GIS, to the hard sciences. There are courses that there are people dealing with issues of poverty, and they are looking at it from a psychology perspective. So they really address the four-dimensional holistic educational experience from engagement to education. So I would really encourage you to reach out to your students to see if they have an interest in whatever career they're pursuing, to frame it within this kind of framework. And when they go here, I mean, they could be a biology major, but do a sustainability minor with it. They could do a certificate, they could do a major concentration. It really, along with the fourth industrial revolution goals, Industry 4.0, these two things are really coming together to bring, a lot of opportunity. So at this point, I'll stop. I'll turn it over to my colleague from Michigan State, Dr. Thiagarajan. Thank you.
Thank you, Theo. That was really well done. And that kind of sets me up perfectly into segue into what I wanted to speak. And I want to request the IC3 administrator to re-spotlight the slides, if you don't mind. All right, moving on. Could you position the slide to, can you advance the slides, please? Next slide. Next slide. Perfect. No, one before, please. All right, very good. So I'm going to tackle this this baby from a different angle. Uttiyo nicely talked about how sustainable development is about meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And then that's a tall marching order. SDGs, as they're commonly known, represent a transformational shift in development thinking and approach. They're very broad-based and very inclusive stakeholder engagement for all people. And there's a strong call for leaving no one behind. They're very comprehensive. They're interconnected, and that's going to be the name of the game today. All the interconnectivity we want to talk about between people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnerships across all 17 goals and 169 targets. For sustainable development to be achieved, it's crucial to harmonize across three core elements of economic growth, social inclusion, and environmental protection. Eradicating poverty in all its forms and dimensions is an indispensable requirement for sustainable development. To this end, there must be promotion of sustainable, inclusive, and equitable economic growth, creating greater opportunities for all, reducing inequalities, and fostering equitable social development. Clearly, this is a stark demonstration that managing all 17 SDGs and 169 targets in concert is like playing three-dimensional chess. And if we understand the fluid rules of the game and associated risks very well, and if we are able to eliminate structural divergence, and if we can minimize the process complexity, we have a fighting chance to win. Next slide, please. Next slide. Great. Now, this brings us to one slide before. Thank you. Now, this brings us to what is commonly called as a wicked problem, and many of you would have heard of the term. What's a wicked problem? It's a social or a cultural problem that's difficult or impossible to solve due to incomplete or contradictory knowledge and the number of people and opinions involved and the large economic burden, and again, the interconnected nature of these problems with other problems. Because of complex interdependencies, the effort to solve one aspect of a wicked problem may reveal or create another problem. It's like trying to unravel this knotted ball of wool that I have represented in this slide. So in a sustainable society, nature is not subject to systematically increasing resources. And in that society, people are not subject to conditions that systematically undermine their capacity to meet their needs. The reason for nature's reduced productive potential is because we're polluting and displacing nature in various ways and consuming renewable resources at such a rate that nature does not have time to build new ones. And at the same time, more and more people on Earth are in need of these resources, and per capita consumption is increasing. This, my friends, is a classic wicked problem. Next slide. Next slide, please. One slide over. Did we lose the feed? One slide before. One slide before. Yes, perfect. Pause there, please. So nearly a decade ago, the Arctic sea ice dropped to the lowest level since modern recording began, and scientists call this event a tipping point in global warming. The risks of unsustainable development was readily apparent even then. However, we were too slow to act. We have struggled to balance between scaring people into action and motivating them to move for their own benefit and capitalize on opportunities. Today's problem is tomorrow's opportunity. Through innovation, creativity, and unlimited potential for change, we can open the walls for the different kind, the fourth kind of industrial revolution that Uttiyo just mentioned. Next slide. So sustainability necessitates a really long-term vision that goes beyond the status quo. We need to be able to see the system in its entirety. We need the ability and creativity to go beyond existing conditions, to imagine what is possible, what is needed, how to get there, while integrating multiple stakeholder insights. Sustainable development is a highly integrated concept, and the solutions are also comprehensive and multidisciplinary processes involving multiple coordinations and functions. SDGs are not independent from each other. They need to be implemented in an integrated manner. Next slide. So why now and why us? We are the first generation capable of determining the habitability of the planet for humans and other species. The decisions of this generation is very crucial. Human presence on a global scale is alarmingly growing, unprecedented growth in population and consumption. The gap between rich and poor are accelerating. But we also have the potential to reduce human suffering, environmental degradation, and social injustice now while building stronger economies. A rapid shift in mindset is needed, and the right kind of higher education is key. So what would that kind of higher education look like? So imagine, what if higher education were to take on a leadership role as it did in the space race or the war on cancer, now to prepare students and providing information and knowledge to achieve a just and sustainable society. So where do I go? How do I start? So here's where we start. Next slide over. Our students are our best possible fighting chance that we have. So in order to give them a best possible fighting chance, we need to bust the myths. First of all, we need to get rid of why me and what's in it for me culture. Okay? The global goals are very important. The world-changing objectives is going to require cooperation amongst governments, international organizations, and world leaders. It sometimes seems impossible that an average person can make an impact. But we should not give up. The change will start with us and with these students. We need to be able to educate our students to bring them up to speed. This is not just about the environment. This is not just about developing and other least developed countries. This is not a social issue. This is not just a social issue. And this ultimately will limit your career options and may not bring returns on your investments. These are the common myths that most students hold near and dear to heart. And we as counselors and educators need to start dismantling these false sense of perceptions. Next slide, please. All right, how do you then go about integrating education for sustainable development? All students must be engaged to become effective change agents in our sustainability challenges. We need to move them from a state of apathy to a caring environment. Students need to know that their daily decisions can affect the quality of life of people around the globe like a domino effect. So how do we proposition that? In order to look beyond, you have to look back. You have to begin clearly with the end in mind for them. But in order to forecast the future, you need to help them backcast to present and present a visioning strategy using the ABCD methodology. And what is it? That is bringing about awareness of challenges and opportunities. Where are they at the baseline? What type of creative solutions can we offer them in terms of their pursuit for higher education? How do we help them make decisions on priorities? And what are these priorities? A student might ask, does it move me in the right direction? Does this undergraduate program have the flexibility that I'm looking for? Will it bring good return on investments? Using these guiding questions, let us help identify game-changing careers that Uttiyo had mentioned. Let's spotlight some of the multidisciplinary majors and careers. Why multidisciplinary majors and careers? Take a look at what Amazon or any other major technological companies' job descriptions these days. You will find more and increasingly that these companies are insisting on those nexus of these multidisciplinary options. These bring about new market potential, and this will also competitively differentiate our stellar students and bring about a platform for innovation in professional development. Next slide, please. And many of the educators here listening into this conversation would agree in the last 2 decades, we've seen scientific research, be it social sciences or STEM sciences, have increasingly used integrated approaches, relying on large, collaborative, multidisciplinary research teams, often working across borders and across sectors. So to address the big societal questions, using a multidisciplinarity approach can draw upon knowledge from different disciplines, but will stay within their boundaries. These multidisciplinary programs can focus primarily on diverse perspectives to bring or illustrate a topic, theme, or issue. And for the students, it offers a more flexible graduation program to pursue their individual interests, what I normally call as having your cake and being able to eat it too. And this incorporates a large number of career paths as well as student interest. And through leadership development and multidisciplinary education, you can integrate the principles of economic health, environmental quality, social equity, and all of these can provide our students with the knowledge and skills necessary to advance sustainability in their fields, as well as to solve the big questions that we've just talked about. So I'm going to illustrate this with an example. Next slide over. Let us look at the major called Biosystems Engineering. What is it? This program integrates engineering principles with life sciences to improve health, environment, and engineering applications. So no longer are we faced with a binary choice, do I pursue medicine or engineering? So we now busted that set of binary choices into a really cool field where this particular pursuit can help create new technologies for the well-being of both humans, animals, preservation and enhancement of natural resources and environment, and bring about really practical applications, practical solutions to solving problems associated with biological systems and preparing students for careers and a whole multitude of options, machine systems, processing systems for food, biofuels, and other byproducts, natural resources for environmental systems. The list goes on and on. So going on to the next slide, what is our marching order now? So the breadth and the interconnectedness of the SDGs make it very evident that professionals from different fields and disciplines and sectors must work towards achieving our goals. Let us first move our students away from learning to earning concept and let them not settle for less. They don't have to sacrifice or compromise or settle for a one-size-fits-all, my brother, my cousin did this, therefore I need to do this. By taking a path of least resistance, they're actually limiting their potentials. And at the same time, let them not be a passive player. Sustainable development affects all of us at equal levels. And as I mentioned, you do see domino effects and ripple effects. So let us help promote combining intellectual acumen with interests, particularly extracurricular interests and commitment and passion. Let's promote multiple pathways to successful careers, as well as gaining employment with prosperity. And let us contribute to sustainable development in a way that protect our planet, nourish our planet, and promote peace across continents. With that thought, I'm going to leave this presentation over to Shishir, who's going to talk about a very particular passion that he's following. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Deepa, and thank you, Dr. Uttiyo. Dr. Uttiyo has, started the presentation by talking about all the SDGs, and Dr. Deepa has also spoke about, from various perspectives. But my presentation is focused on SDG 13. I chose this because, I wanted to dig deeper and talk about this presentation. But as both the speakers highlight, these are not mutually exclusive goals. So each goal is dependent on other goals. So we need to talk about them. Can we go to the next slide, please? And it can be pinned down also. That will be really helpful. So why we are talking about climate? Do I need to respond to this? If you think about the forest fires, if you think about the floods, the tsunamis, the way the climate is actually working out, and we all are blaming other countries. Hey, developing countries are not doing their part. Developed countries are not doing their part. So why we should start doing these things? It's very important. We all have to be mindful about that. If you think about the global temperature, it's keep on rising from 2015 to 2020. These 5 years were the hottest 5 years in the planet's history, and it's going on like this only. In 2020, the average temperature was 1.2 degree higher than the pre-industrial level, which if it goes through this way in this century, the average temperature will goes on as high as 3 degrees higher, which can have a catastrophic impact on glaciers. It can cause lots of forest fires. Many cities and sometimes countries can also be submerged in water. So the time to act was yesterday. Today, I think it's too late. So, but we have to work. We have to do something that is towards the positive side. 125 out of 154 countries have already started developing some sort of framework and adopting them. In India also, you can see that, we are now becoming BS6 compliant. There are lots of other measures that are being undertaken by the government regarding CNG adoption and using green building materials. So there are lots of things that are happening, but still it's not happening at the pace which we want it to be. So if we really want to keep it at 1.5, so by 2030, we have to be reducing our emissions by 45% of what it was in 2010. So yes, the goal is pretty big, and by 2050 we need to be achieve net carbon neutrality. So yes, there are things that we have to achieve, and but the climate financing is rising. Means that the developed economies are trying to finance those economies that cannot implement these measures on their own, and this is positive direction. This is where we want to be, but still we need to work on it a lot more. Can we please go to the next slide? So these are the targets which are important, and we need to make sure that we are following those targets. We need to strengthen. We need to strengthen our efforts. We need to strengthen our community so that we can totally support these initiatives. We need to achieve those targets. We need to have a proper law by which we are governing our industries, our domestic population. There has to be some level of commitment both from the policy side as from the government side. We all have to also advocate. That's what we are trying to do here today. Try to advocate why we need to do these things. And then we also have to follow the UN framework on climate convention. So this is again something which we all have to know that why we are talking about it. In whether it's a student who is in class second, or whether it's someone who is as knowledgeable as a person with a doctorate degree. So we all have to be aware about why we are even talking about it. What's the impact it's going to be? And again, we have to support those economies where they are not having enough, but they are contributing to lots and lots of climate changes. So we have to be inclusive, not at the national or domestic level, but at the international level. Next slide, please. So if we see the impact, if you see major construction, what's happening now? There are so many different facets of why we are contributing to emissions. We are contributing to emissions because of construction activities and transportation activities. So many activities that's being still carried out that's not helping us achieve the emission goals. Um, what's this impact is? It's actually affecting those who are most vulnerable. You know, uh, think about drought. Who suffers the most by drought? The farmers, their families, even those who can't take care of their two ends meal. They are the ones who are mostly affected because of that. If cities will be submerged, where those people will go? They will go to another place where they will lose their livelihood. So, we all have to be inclusive and think about what the impact will be from each perspective, not only thinking about, hey, the climate is rising and I will be not feeling very well because the temperature is too much and I'm feeling a bit claustrophobic. That's not the only impact. The impact is at the various levels. So many countries are at the verge of being totally submerged. Maldives is one of them. People are saying that if we can't control the way we are going, Maldives will be submerged by 2030. So, do we want that? Do we want a country to be submerged like that? Or it's not only about them; it's all about us also. What about the coastal cities that we are having in our country? So, we all have to be mindful about that. Next slide, please. So, why we are talking about this and why we are talking about it today in this session? So, we are talking about this today because the students of today will be leaders of tomorrow, and they are the ones who need to be aware about why has to be taken care of. And another aspect you think about right from our independence struggle and everything. So youth is most important group to take on any revolutionary effect. So our our main aim is to guide them, provide them information so that they can take positive measures. So they need to be aware about what they have to do, and we don't need to do big things. Like IC3's motto, a small act of change can really work wonders. So that's what we have to do. So even if they are ensuring that when they are in a room, they are switching off the light, they are not plugging on their computer and using it without the battery getting charged and then stop charging them. So small changes can help. And why it's important at the local level, at the global level, they need to understand that. Third thing that we also want to do is that they should start coming up with projects, whether it's a science project, whether it's a social project, and school needs to celebrate that. So if some students or group of students are doing something like that, the school should highlight their achievement, what they are doing. They should talk about it internally with other students, and they should also talk about in the group, in the community, that hey, our students did that, and this is what the result was. So, and this is what's going to help the students understand that whatever I am doing, it's meaningful. It's going to have an impact. I'm not doing this just because I have to write something in my college essay. I'm doing it because it's a contribution towards the society. It's a contribution towards my future. So that's something which we all have to be mindful about, and they should be mindful about. And they should also inform about the career opportunities. Although I have mentioned here about SDG 13 because that's my focus, but they should talk about all the careers that are related to all the SDGs. Think about those people who were not aware that BS6 norms will be in place and all the engines, all the emissions has to be compliant to that. Now, where the jobs will be, and they need to understand that this is going to be the future. So they have to keep in mind that these policies are coming up, and they all have to be part of the triple bottom line. So profitability is important, but what about sustainability? Sustainability is as important as profitability because if you are not sustainable, you will not be profitable in a long run. So they all have to understand that and inculcate that in their mindset. So next slide, please. So these are some of the jobs. I'm saying some of the jobs because every job is getting affected by this. It's not like that whatever we are doing or whatever anyone else is doing is going to be spared by the upcoming regulation. And most of the Paris Accord things are legally binding. So it's an international treaty which everyone has to honor. And we all have to keep this in mind. And all these careers are amazing. Some of them students can start at the back after the bachelor's level itself. For some, they need to have to complete their master's and PhD education. But these are important areas. These are important, careers where the students can actually make a difference. And these are the careers which have growth. You can see most of the careers which are mentioned here, the employment is seeing the growth, and that's going to be growth for the consistent amount of time. So with this, I would definitely like to close my presentation and invite you all for asking any question that you might be having. I'm sure you might be having lots of questions, and we would love to answer them.
Thank you, Shishir. Thank you, Deepa. Thank you for those insightful remarks. At this time, I turn to all of you for questions you have. The ones who are in the virtual format can also, share some through the chat. But maybe we'll begin with maybe a question from the audience or the folks who are in person in the Jahangir room. So, do we have a question or any comment, any insight, any thoughts? Maybe how about I'll pose one for Deepa and Shishir. Um, we spoke about the role of sustainability with education and the curriculum and all that. Um, could you talk a little bit about when we talk about future jobs and careers? What is the skill set development and the opportunities that are related to sustainability and education?
Shishir, you want to go first? You're on
I
mute.
think I was not
You're on mute, yeah.
So, yes, exactly. So, sustainability is why we are talking about, even when I was a student and when I was doing my MBA. And so the first thing that we used to focus upon the sustainability, and it was a chapter, this was not like that, I have to go dig deeper about the same. But in today's environment, when we are seeing that the things are changing and we are experiencing such a big climate duress, and, it's happening around us, and the industry is getting ready to tackle that. So the policies are coming up, and I mentioned some of the policies regarding emission norms. What about sustainable use of the resources that we have? What about sanitation protocols? That's another SDG that is important. Clean water. So all of these are very important areas where everyone can work towards. So whether you are working as a civil engineer, whether you are working as an economist, because economist role is also important. They need to tackle the situation. They need to understand how they can come up with a measure that's not affecting the industries adversely, at the same time giving them profit but keeping them sustainable. So the job opportunities are there with every sector and every role. We just need to be mindful about, hey, if tomorrow something like that comes up where we have to come up with a sustainable solution, are we ready for that? Are we thinking in that direction? You can't think about it spontaneously. You have to have that thought process while you are studying, while you are developing your thought processes. And that's what my take on it. You have to start thinking about it when you are studying rather than thinking about it when you are working, because then there will always be a gap.
In the interest of time,
We have audience
maybe
questions.
we will go to Pooja, who is raising her hand. Pooja, if you can unmute yourself and go ahead with your question.
Namaste and thank you. So this is actually an extension to your original question only about the opportunities in the new careers that we're talking about. And since we are career counselors, work with high school students, so what kind of support system can we expect, or there's rather at the same time, there's a request also if the universities and schools can work together so that tomorrow, if say we are suggesting, just giving an example, suppose we are suggesting, say, climatologist as a career to a high school, a 16-year-old or a 15-year-old student, in order to explore such opportunities, at what kind of career or what kind of demands or nature that it entails, how can we support that? Taking the support from the universities, are there any internship opportunities? Are there any, say, support from the professors? So it's a reflection and a question at the same time.
Deepa, you want to take a stab at that?
Sure. I think there were multiple layers to what Pooja was asking. First of all, wondering if there could be a concerted and coordinated effort between universities and schools, sort of matchmaking interests and passion and pursuits, right? If I understood that question.
Yes.
Yes, it does. It is happening at some nascent levels already. At least in our university, we extensively participate in, career days at high schools, where we showcase all the STEAM disciplines. To Uttiyo's point, art being central, along with the STEM disciplines. And we also at our university have capstone projects for high school students to take a sustainability related issue to articulate solutions to that and potentially offer them some kind of a reward or scholarship to get them involved in our undergraduate disciplines and programs. So at different university levels, this sort of cross-pollination is already taking place indeed, but it's not taking place at a scale of economy that we would like to ideally see. But in terms of career options, I think it was Uttiyo who made the point on the chat. We need to prepare our students for jobs that are not there today, but we need to not only create a pipeline of students to meet the demand that's going to come tomorrow, but in essence, we have to create the demand ourselves. We have to train the students for the problems tomorrow, and then it's a guessing game, really. So to that end, promoting this cross-pollination of disciplines is the way to go. Combining social sciences and humanities with science and technology is the name of the game at the moment. If you were to look at positions out of World Bank or other UN agencies, and as well as Amazon, which is running a huge sustainability program right now, particularly in India, or Google's got a great Google food platform at the moment. If you look at all of these JDs coming out of, be it public sector organizations or private sector, you're almost going to see requirement and competencies that go beyond the norm. And language skills are also just as equally required these days. So we need to use the adage, think outside the box, break down those barriers, and be very creative in mixing and matching these disciplines for the jobs that are coming tomorrow. Because, as Shashir said, this is something we should have acted upon yesterday. We don't have the luxury of sitting on our laurels anymore. So as counselors and as educators, we have to follow the adage of necessity being the mother of invention. In a roundabout way, I'm saying this, but there are several resources, Pooja. You can look at UN sites. You can look at several public sector universities out of US as well, land grant universities. We have a lot of what Uttiyo referred to as MOOC courses, massive open online courses that anyone can take. And that would also be another start to get our students as well as counselors get their feet wet. Over to you.
Thanks, Deepa. We are severely out of time, and I understand the passion that everyone's bringing in. And I don't want this to go away. So I'm going to give you a brilliant opportunity. So firstly, thank you to all of you who attended the session today, especially to everyone who's been in person. Amazing. I say jealous of you who are there. We had an opportunity to briefly explore some of this, but I highly encourage you, not only that you volunteer with IC3, but come and join, be part of this IC3 Sustainable Development Committee that we have. And immediately following this session, I actually ask you, we will continue this conversation and we will be joined by some amazing people. I see Lucian and others are here who will be there. So in the virtual platform, in the virtual lobby, look up Sustainable Development Counseling Room. Come on over. We will carry on this conversation. But right now, thank you so much. before you go, please do not forget, go to your mobile app, provide us your session feedback. We shared our emails with you. If you have any questions, reach out through the committee to us directly. We were happy to chat with you, provide more insights. I think there's some great thoughts and questions that have come through. But once again, thank you all. Thank you, Deepa. Thank you, Shishir. Thanks, everyone.
See you at the booth.
Have a wonderful rest of your day, night, whatever, rest of the year. Stay safe, stay well, and we will continue these conversations. Hope to see you all soon. Thank you very much.